Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing you another CSS tutorial. We're going to be creating two kinds of menu buttons, one that can sit anywhere on your page and another one that sits in the navbar and is responsive. So let's jump right in. The first thing I need to do is create our HTML file. We're going to use the boilerplate code provided by Visual Studio Code. We're going to link up our CSS file and also going to link a JavaScript library that I wrote called Toolbox. So https roland.pro/code/js/toolbox/toolbox.js, and we can remove this async and defer that are added by default because we want it to load pretty much as soon as the page loads. Plus it's a pretty small project, so no big deal. Alright, we're gonna add two buttons. One is on the page by itself. We're gonna call this page button, and we're also going to add an unordered list to this, which contains a link. Let's call this link 1 and duplicate it twice. We're going to call these links 2 and 3. Then we're going to copy this and add a nav and drop our copied button inside of there. Each of those buttons will have an ID, so the nav button will be nav button, or nav menu, sorry. So let's call that nav menu, and let's call this one page menu. Let's change these text to read nav menu and page menu. And the live preview plugin doesn't always work, so I'll just reload that. It's an ongoing issue that can be a little frustrating at times. There they are. We also need a class for each button, so you're going to share the same class actually, class menu. And then we're going to add an onClick attribute to each of them. And that onClick attribute will have the function toggle class, which is pulled from the Toolbox plugin or library that I would have written. So what toggle class does is, as the function name suggests, toggle a class on or off. So we reference the ID that we want to affect. In this case that would be nav menu, and then we will reference the class that we want to add or remove, which in this case is open. And then we can copy this attribute to the other button and just change the ID that we referenced to page menu as opposed to nav menu, and that should basically cover everything for our HTML code. So we can jump over to CSS. Now what we're going to do is set some defaults for everything on the page with a wildcard selector. Let's set padding to 0 and margin to 0 and box sizing to border box. And what that does is prevent your width and height from being affected by the borders or padding on any object, and also remove the padding and margin from all of your objects by default so that you can then set them to whatever you need them to be. So next thing we want to style is the body, and let's give it a background color of RGB 35, 135, 235. also going to set the display to flex, height to 100 view height, align items to center, and justify content to center. Then we're going to set up the nav with position fixed, top of 0, left of 0, right 0, and bottom we are going to use calc to give it its position. Then we're going to set display to flex, justify content flex end, align items to stretch. Now if there's anything in your code that is basically reusing any properties, you can group them all together. So like body and nav are all using display flex, so we can cut this from here and put it here. And right, I believe that's just it. Those are the only two that they're sharing at this point, so we can leave those there. Alright, the next thing we want to do is set up the menu class, which will be applied to the buttons, of course. Now their minimum width will be 150 pixels. Their text transform will be uppercase. Font size 75%. We're also going to have them to display as flex, so we're going to add menu to this selector up here. I'm going to align items to center and justify content center. Well, actually we can share those properties with the body, so let me go ahead and do that. And this is just to keep our code simplified, of course. Avoiding duplication wherever possible. I'm going to set position on the menu class to relative. And the unordered list within the menu, we will set position to absolute. Top 100%. Left we are going to set to -1 pixel because of the border. Right we're also going to set to -1 pixel. And we're not going to set bottom this time because that will be taken care of automatically because the height of the contents. So the next thing we want is the list style. We want to turn that off. Set list style to none. We're also going to set the links within those menus to text decoration, none. Color, we're going to make that RGB 35, 35, 35, which is a dark grey color close to black but not exactly black. Much better for your eyes. And we can set also their state, so we can have menu A hover, menu A focus, and menu A active. All have the same color at this point, and text decoration. But we are going to change one of these down here, which is menu A hover. This will override the previous one. So menu A hover will have a color of RGB 235, 235, and 235. Background color will be RGB 35, 35, 35. And let's copy this color here up to the previous declaration block, but we're going to change it to background color. Then we're going to set the width 100%. And another thing, we're going to set the menu list elements, their width will be 100% as well. Let's just make sure that we're not missing anything here. Border 1px solid red. Okay, that solved it. Display flex on the LI element solves our problems there. So we're going to take this out and put that up here. Menu LI to display as flex, and menu A. Let's also add this up here. Good, so that solves our issues with that. I've done this one before and didn't have that issue, but obviously I made some mistake along the way, or did something differently than what I did previously, and that issue cropped up. But that happens from time to time. Alright, now let's just double check something and see. Oh, yeah, I was missing a semicolon there. Right, that happens from time to time. We make mistakes as human beings. No, the menu, we're also going to set the height on this to a defined height. So let's make it 50 pixels. And the menu button in the nav bar, we want that to be a automatic height, so we're going to set that to menu. Oh wait, nav, oops, press the wrong key there. Nav, menu, and we're going to put height to initial. Now what that does is it resets the height to whatever it would have been by default. And now let me show you what will happen if I change the height of the nav. Let's say I were to make the height of the nav 80 pixels, the button within it also changes height. If I made it 200, it also changes height. So let me set it back to 50 and that should show you. Works perfectly. And I can also change the background color of this one to something a little more interesting. So let's go with 35, 35, 35 for that one. And change the color to that nearly white color that we used before. In this case, I'm also going to turn off the border. So border none. Good. Now we have everything in place and looking good, we're going to actually turn our menus off. So menu LI, where is it? Or menu UL, sorry. Display none. So now our menus are hidden and we need to make them clickable. Technically, the JavaScript that we linked up does that already, but we're going to need a class to actually make that work. And that class that we would have referenced before is open. So we add the class open and put display flex. Now watch what happens when we click. Obviously this either did not reload or it is not picking up something. So let me see if I linked up everything correctly here. Oh, I know what I did wrong. There we go. And instead of display flex, that should be display block. Right. So now when we click on the menus, this is what happens. So just a correction, instead of display flex, use display block. But if you do use display flex, you can set the flex flow to column and it will still work just the same. Alright, I'm going to set this back to block since we don't need to use flexbox for that. Kind of overcomplicates things to use flexbox unnecessarily. So we'll just set it back to display block. Now you'll notice that there is a small problem here since there's no border on the nav menu in the the menu in the nav bar. There's no border there, so we can fix that by coming to this block right here, duplicate it, and add UL and change the left and right values to left 0 and right 0. And now it is the exact width of the button. So now let's say we wanted to make this responsive, this nav menu, we want that to be responsive. So when you resize the window down to a certain size, it will actually give you a hamburger menu, as we call it. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to add a media query. And we use media only screen and max width. You can go with something like 1000 px in this case. And then we are going to put menu, well, nav menu, sorry, not just menu, nav menu width. We're going to set that to 50 pixels. And to hide this text, what we're going to do is wrap it in a span. And we're going to put nav menu span display none. Right, there we go. Oh right, I use minimum width instead of width. I keep forgetting that oftentimes. Sorry, minimum width instead of width, and now it works. So minimum width to 50 pixels, and now we are going to add some fancy stuff here. We want nav menu after, this is a pseudo element, and we are going to put position to absolute. Then we are going to add content of 3 of these vertical lines, whatever they're called. Transform, rotate 90 degrees. And you can move that around just a little bit so that it does not have any misalignment. So left to about say 62% I believe should do it. Alright, that's a bit much. When I tested it before, that was the value that I actually ended up having to use. So let me just modify this a bit now till I get it exactly right. Or at least in a relative sense, yeah. About 43.5% seems to work here. Right, so now let me resize this. It does exactly as it should. Now the final thing that we will need to do is to make sure that when we open this menu that nothing gets squished. Because as you can see, since the width of our menu is set by the position, it is not actually as wide as it should be. So what we're going to do is nav menu. Always make sure you have your correct selectors there. Nav menu UL, and left we are going to change that to negative. Let's go with about 100%. And there it is. It's no wider than it was before, but we want it to be even wider than that. So let's change it to about 200%. And now it's about the width of the original menu. So good, there we go. That's about it. That is everything that you need to know how to create two kinds of menu buttons. One that sits anywhere on your page. This doesn't have to be centered like I did here. This is just to make it easier to see. But you can use this anywhere on the page. And one that sits in the navbar and is responsive as well. So I hope you've learned something from that. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. And I'd like you to try an experiment on your own, see what you come up with. I'd be very curious to see what you do. So you can share your experiments in the comments. Link me up to some code panes, some GitHub, wherever you like to store your code. Let me see what you did. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you can see more content from me anytime I post.